Okay, I think it's time we can get started. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the first TEAS working group interim session for this year. My name is Pawan Biram, and I'll be co-chairing this session along with Lou Berger. Luis Contreras is our working group secretary. You should be able to access the meeting materials for this session using the link specified on the slide and also from the Meet Echo window. This is the IETF notewell. It sets the ground rules for the way we interact with the IETF. It applies to interim meetings as well. If you're not familiar with it, please do get yourself familiarized quickly. You can use the link at the bottom of the slide to get the complete details. Please do note that anything that you say here in session or on the mailing list is part of the public record. As you may have noticed, we do have a personnel change. We have a new working group secretary. Luis Contreras will be serving as our working group secretary starting with this meeting. Please join us in welcoming him. We would like to thank Matt Hartley, our outgoing working group secretary, for all the hard work that he has done in this role for the past few years. We would also like to thank those of you who volunteered to serve as the working group secretary. It's always good to see folks willing to come forward and serve the community. In terms of meeting logistics, we are using Meet Echo. Thanks for joining the session via Meet Echo. The integrated chat or Jabber is available for use. We will be tracking the chat during the session. Please use the notes.ietf.org link that's listed here for minute taking. Any help with regards to note taking would be greatly appreciated. While taking notes, do remember that you just need to capture the discussion and not what is being presented. Today's session is a network slicing focused meeting. The focus is exclusively on the open issues in our working group adopted network slice framework document and on the network slice NBI modeling discussion that is still active on the list. The objective is to discuss and progress as much as we can towards resolution on these open items. This is the agenda for today. Adrian will have a go first and highlight the open issues in the framework document. We will attempt to address open questions on the definition of the service, the endpoint, and also look at the realization architecture as part of this section. We will then dive into the next section, which is the NBI discussion. The authors of the document that we are currently polling for adoption would go first and talk about the rationale behind their modeling approach. This would be presented by Bo. Daniele would follow that up with a view on the concerns related to the document that is under consideration. We have about 20 minutes after that for open discussion on the topics covered. We will use this 20 minutes discussion time as we deem fit. The chairs would then hopefully be able to wrap things up by summarizing how we did with the session objectives in the last 5 minutes. Did I miss a slide? Okay. In terms of liaisons and communications from other standards bodies, we received one communication from GSMA in August. They sent a pointer to a white paper that they put together, which discusses the end-to-end network slicing architecture. They are asking us to take this paper into consideration and are seeking feedback on it. There is a request for an action to be taken. I think the deadline is October 15th. If anyone in the working group is interested in sending a response to GSMA, please do review the white paper and propose a response on the list. We can then have this discussed and coordinated with the IESG and also with the IAB if needed, because we don't have a formal liaison relationship with GSMA. We'll get this done via our AD. The same process would apply for any communication to any other standards group interested in our slicing work that you would wish to send. As a reminder, we do have an IPR process in place to for our working group, there are two mandatory steps before accepting a document into the working group, and also before taking it to last call. We mandate all authors and contributors of the document to explicitly state if they are aware of an IPR that applies to the document. In recent months, we did introduce another step in the process. If any new author or contributor is added to a working group adopted document, we request them to send out an IPR statement to the list. Finally, please do use the mailing list as much as possible. Please be aware that the mailing list is where the working group consensus is actually determined. So it always makes sense to have these conversations happen on the list. We don't know how long we will continue to be in this online mode, so we'll try and make the best use of the tools that are available to us to make progress on the documents. Working group members can request for an online interim to be scheduled if there is a need to cover a specific topic. Today's session is a good example of that. And also note that several working group participants are already making use of the working group WebEx to hold regular informal working meetings. You can request the chairs if you have such a need. These meetings will be announced on the list and will be open to all. That's all I believe we have for this lot. I will now go over to Adrian for his presentation.
Thanks, Pavan. Do you want me to present? You're going to present? What are we doing?
I can present.
Lovely.
Give me 1 second.
So what I'm going to try to do is a quick run through the chief open issues, next slide, that we kind of identified at the last IETF and have been working through maybe a bit slowly. My hope is that we can at least get a sense of this room as to which way we should be going, and that'll drive me to float text to the mailing list where decisions actually get made. There are probably lots of other issues, but let's focus on these for now, and then if you've got other issues, perhaps you can kick me to put them on my list. Next slide. So network slice service, that's interestingly screwed up its conversion from PowerPoint to whatever this is. We have a top level definition, and that's almost agreed. And I've quoted the text here in the indented stuff. The red marked shows an edit that needs to be made, which is removing the term CE and sticking with endpoint, which gives a lot more clarity to this definition. With that change made, I believe we do have agreement, but there was debate about one point here, and the point was whether one service, one network slice service, can contain multiple connectivity matrices. The point is, at the moment, the definition allows for multiple, and with that definition, an operator or an implementer is free to have just one matrix per service. And at the same time, we had heard some people say that a service may want to include multiple matrices. And that, of course, doesn't require anybody to support that or to do it, but some people may want to. I think it's useful in looking at that question to go to the next slide and look at what is a connectivity matrix. And there's a little confusion here, okay? Our definition of a connectivity matrix is not a network with delivery capabilities. And the way to think about that is a mesh network. In a mesh network, you can push a packet into the network and it is routed from the ingress to other destinations, either one destination for point-to-point or multiple destinations for point-to-multipoint. And that's analogous to a VPN. But the definition we have here is much more like a tunnel or LSP view. So in that sense, a P2MP connectivity matrix means that all packets from the ingress endpoint are delivered to all the egress endpoints. So when you build a network slice service request, you might be saying, I want a set of point-to-point potential connections so that I can build a full mesh and send my traffic how I want. Or you might be saying, I want several point-to-points and several point-to-multipoints and one multipoint-to-multipoint, and build it up like that. So with that understanding of a connectivity matrix, I'd just like to ask if anybody wants to answer the question on the previous slide, if you could go back one, Pavan. That question is, are we happy with a service being allowed to contain multiple connectivity matrices? And there is Tarek, speak man.
I think, okay, what you're proposing is having a connectivity matrix per type, meaning point-to-point, point-to-multipoint, or multi-point-to-multipoint. So within the same slice, one can have a different connectivity matrices with different types. Did I understand you well there?
That is correct, yes.
I think this is useful, and indeed, there could be multiple applications running on top of the slice, some unicast, some multicast, and having the capability would be useful. That's my opinion.
Thank you.
Anybody else wants to chime in?
Okay, so this is good because this is what the text in the document currently has. So anybody wanting to object to that, or in fact, if Lewis wants to speak.
Yes, thank you, Adrian. My only point here was that also in this definition of the connectivity matrix, there was the idea of only specify the parameters for the delivery, for the transmission, not for the reception. So not if this will be covered later, but my point here would be okay for having more than one matrix. This is at the end, it can be realized in different manners later on by the network slice controller. But this matrix should be complete, and probably for being complete, also we need the receiver information, the reception information.
Okay, got you. This isn't on my slides. I've made a note, and I will set that out on the list and see if we can get agreement, because I think people did have different opinions. Okay, Pavan, if you could go forward 2 slides then. Right. Network slice service and service request is going to be the subject of much more discussion later in the meeting. So in the context of this document, the question is simply how much information do we need to put in the framework document about what is a slice service request? At the moment, we've just got a very high level talking about SLOs and SLEs and connectivity matrices and endpoints. We could put more in along the lines of an information model, or we could just say, let's just cut to writing the Yang model for the customer service model for an MBA, for a network slice, and not put anything more in this document. Any opinions? And Pavan wants to talk to himself. Go ahead.
Not to myself, hopefully. Yeah, personally, I think the information model, adding that to this framework document is a bit of an overkill. Like you're saying, I think you do have most of the components already listed, maybe a bit more text, and I think we should be good. I think info model in this document at least is overkill.
Well, that certainly works for me because it's less work, and it's really cheering to hear you volunteering to suggest the little bit more text that's needed.
Sure.
Igor.
Hey guys, hey Adrian. Just a quick question. If you have, say, two connectivity matrices in the same slice, okay, and say two pair of endpoints belong to both connectivity matrices, how do you distinguish which connectivity matrix needs to be used in particular case?
So, yeah, that question is real and needs an answer, but I believe that the answer is solution dependent. Let me give you an example of a way you might do it. The way you might do it is simply to assign a different VLAN tag to each connectivity matrix.
Okay, so this would I would understand if you assign different VLAN to different slice. Okay, then it makes sense. But within the same slice, there could be a problem, right?
I really desperately don't want to get sucked into the how to make this work using particular technology solutions. But if you
my point is that it's probably unnecessary. So why not to use separate slices and use one connectivity matrix per slice? Then it's very clear.
So you need to go back and look at that definition of connectivity matrix. If what you want to do is stick with that definition, then all you're saying is let's have lots and lots of slices compared to compared to one slice with multiple matrices.
Lots of them.
Yeah. So my original point was, if an implementer wants to support multiple matrices on a slice and they can do it, why should we stop them?
Because then you need to have two identifications, right? One for slice, one for connectivity matrix inside. If you have one for one, then you don't need the second one.
I hear you, but I don't see why you would prevent someone from doing it if they wanted to.
Then we'll have to add semantics for that.
No, because one identifier can identify a slice, or one identifier can identify a matrix on a slice.
So are you talking about like the same namespace across all slices and connectivity matrices?
No.
So if I'm using several slices and within each slice I have several connectivity matrices, right? So how do I distinguish that?
Well, because you use a name that identifies, and you're only identifying it between the customer and the provider. So CE to PE, it's the only scope of this identification.
Yeah.
You are identifying this slice and this connectivity matrix. So 7 means slice A connectivity 1, 8 means slice A connectivity 2, 9 means slice B connectivity 1.
Right. So you basically suggesting that connectivity matrices has to be numbered across all slices.
No. A connectivity matrix applies only at the PE, at the head end of the connectivity matrix, and it is identified within the context of a slice by some magic identifier agreed between the CE and the PE.
Hey, Adrian, hold on a sec. I'm just going to point out where we are on time.
Yeah,
and,
sure.
We can steal a little time from the final discussion, but we probably shouldn't steal too much. So I'm going to let you manage the queue as you'd like. And John, if you want to go into the queue, you should enter the queue. We have Joel and John Scudder in the queue.
So may I comment on this?
Go for it, Joel.
Okay. I am a little confused by Igor's assertions because I'm looking at the email that Christoph sent to the list, which pointed out that you may want multiple connectivity matrices to represent different services for different subsets of traffic within the slice. And separately, you may have properties, for example, of the port that are slice wide. Therefore, it is not sufficient to just say, well, just use a separate slice for each connectivity matrix, because there are properties that are for the slice and there are properties that are for the connectivity matrix. And if that is true, and I believe he is correct, then the structure you're using is correct, and we may need to allow more cases where there are multiple connectivity matrices. But again, exactly how the traffic is bound is not a problem we need to deal with at this level.
Okay, thanks, Joel. What I've just written down for myself is that I need to draw and show everybody a Venn diagram that I believe will explain and at least allow us to make a decision. And yep. John has gone away. Oh, but I do see John Drake. Do you want to talk, John?
We did have proposed text which said exactly what you said, which is there are technology-specific fields in the L2 and L3 headers which identify a particular slice and a particular connectivity matrix within that slice.
Yeah, we have that text in the document, and it's just a question of whether we can get everybody to agree that it is at least harmless. Okay, for time, let's move on to the next issue. Next slide. So the next thing up was endpoints. The debate was, where is the slice service delivered? And a lot of this discussion has happened in the context of CEs and PEs, but we should recognize that this terminology of CE and PE is not universally helpful when people are interested in, for example, network functions and so on. But it's a useful picture. And I identified 4 cases of where the service endpoint might be, as shown on this figure. And the text goes through those. I don't think I'll read all that text out. So go to the next slide. Oh, right. Did you just skip one there? Yes, okay. That's it. That one. Thank you. What I want to do is cut to my conclusions here and say that we should embrace all 4 possible endpoint locations. I think this came out in a thread on the list, probably as far back as April, where Reza and a couple of others were exchanging emails about where the endpoints might be. So I'd like to embrace all 4 locations, try not to talk about CE and PE, except as examples that help make it easier to see what's going on, and drop down to terms such as slice customer edge and slice provider edge. There's a slight pause there while I wait to see if anybody is rushing to the microphone. Reza, yes. Reza muted.
Reza?
Reza still on. Oh, there you go. Speak now.
Yeah, I was on mute. So as you summarized it well, in this case, Adrian, I agree with your conclusion. All 4 locations might be the use depends on use case, might be the case, and I agree with whatever you put at the conclusion here. Thanks.
Brilliant, thank you. That's good to hear, because you were the main person in that discussion. So I will convert this into text. As you see, I've already done the ASCII art. The management architecture is a bit boring and it's a bit NBI document. Let's go to the next slide. Right, realization architecture. The desire is to have a common and generic architecture that's independent of solution approaches. So we need to get terminology that we can all agree on, and then technology solutions can point back. The challenge is that the solutions work is quite advanced, and so we've got a bit stuck with terminology and models, but really good offline discussion between the authors of 2 sets of drafts, the Enhanced VPN and the BestBar families. They're making good progress. So next slide. What we can agree on is that we need some kind of scaling mechanism so that the very many slices don't need to be individually micromanaged in the network. So we need some kind of grouping according to common properties of the slice. And then each group of services need to be mapped to a set of network resources to support the group. There's a question there as to whether we need to be able to break out individual flows from services, slice services, and map them onto different sets of network resources. Some debate on that. I find it hard to justify. But anyway, next slide. So we need a group of resources. How do we build that set of resources? And what is the mapping of services to a set of resources? One-to-one and N-to-one seem to be obvious for scaling. N-to-M is a bit confusing, both from an implementer's point of view, but also how to express it. And then I think the next slide is the last one I will talk about in this meeting. And this pretty picture is attempting to get some terminology out. And so the way to read this picture is to read it from the top down and the bottom up at the same time. From the top down, a network slice is this set of potential connections between endpoints. And that's a customer view. And from the bottom upwards, we have a physical network that has to be programmed to forward and treat the traffic correctly. Then continuing from the bottom upwards, there's the potential to filter a topology to produce a set of nodes, links, resources that have specific capabilities. For example, they might be links that support MACsec, whatever. From the top down, we have this thing of grouping slices into a bundle, a set that we operate on a partition of the network resources. And then we have this thing of generating that set of resources from the available topology. The names we have here, IETF network slice and IETF network slice service, I think we're happy with. Physical network, we're happy with. And that just gives us two names to deal with. The network resource partition, and I think I'm seeing debate now that we're down to either network resource partition or network resource group, with slightly different overtones for group or partition. And then we've not really talked about the filter topology, but I think that is a relatively simple thing, and anyway, it's an optional stage. So I'm going to stop talking there, and people can talk about this now, or you can punt chairs to the session at the end.
We have 2 more minutes, so we can take maybe a question or two.
Reza.
Can you elaborate on that filter topology? What is it exactly trying to achieve with that?
So you might want to look at a topology built of links and nodes that have a well-known ability to deliver a type of service. That might be a quality thing, it might be a security thing, it might be allowing you to be isolated. So you might have a red and a blue topology, for example.
Luke?
Okay, thanks.
Adrian, is the resource partition defined by the filter topology, or what is the relationship between the resource partition group and that filter topology?
Yeah, you would take resources for the resource group partition from only one filter topology.
So a group inherently has topological relevance or significance, scope, I guess is the right word to say it.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. For me, as participant, partition makes sense only if it's related to a specific topology, because we always talk about partitions as separation of parts of the network. So from that context, a group to me would be independent, or could be independent of topology.
Yeah, I kind of buy that, except I would say that think of the filter topology as being an optional thing. So underlying all this, you have a physical network, and there had better be a topology there. Tarek, you get the last word.
Yes, hi. I think this is a very useful diagram, honestly, and thanks for putting it together. It clarifies a lot, how we, at the end of the day, realize the service in our underlay transport network. And, the steps might vary, which one starts before the next one. But overall, at least the solution that we are pushing for is aligned with this. So I would like to see this in our network slice draft, at least this diagram, if you can.
Yes, yeah, you'll notice it's pre-prepared in ASCII as well. you're right. I had started work on a workflow, and then I believe that which order you build these things in is very much implementation specific, and probably doesn't matter from a framework point of view. Thanks, chairs. Over to you.
Thanks, Adrian. Let me bring up. Let's dive into the next section. Okay, we will now shift our focus to the network slice NBI discussion. We did initiate the adoption poll for draft WD on August 27th. There seems to be consensus on the need, at least on the need for an IETF network slice NBA data model to be furnished. There is reasonable support for adopting this document as the starting point for this work, but we do have a reasonable number of working group participants who have raised concerns on the modeling approach used in this document. We do need to resolve these concerns, and that would be the objective for this section of the session. At a high level, there are primarily two questions that we would like to get discussed and resolved. The first question is with regards to the scope of the NBI. Is this a service model or is it something else? There seems to be a school of thought positioning this as a network model. We'll have Daniele present that. The second question is, what should the NBI be based on? Should we define a new independent service model as is defined in draft WD, or should we use the existing VN model, or should we define a new model by augmenting the VN model, or any other existing service model like L3SM or LTSM? Or do we leave room for all options? So hopefully by the end of this session, we will have some clarity on the way forward for these questions. So without any further delay, let's bring on Bo first to give the presentation on behalf of the authors of Draft WD. Bo, you're up next. Give me just a minute to shift slides.
Hello?
Can you see the slides?
Okay.
Go ahead, Bo.
Yeah, okay, thanks. This is Bo, and I will be present on behalf of all these co-authors. Next slide, please. Oh, I cannot see the screen. Do anyone can see this? Oh, yeah. Yes. During working group adoption call, we received various comments on this model. And so here, I would like to highlight that because there's some comments about the model's purpose and some about the modeling approach. And the first thing that I would like to highlight that this model, given the definition on 8309, its service model explained that this model is a customer service model. As Adrian just presented, the network slice framework defines IETF network slice service, and the framework also defined that network slice northbound interface will be used by customer to request for the network slices. So based on the customer service model definition, this NBI model is classified as a customer service model. So, and since this is a customer service model, and we during the modeling process, we investigate the current existing customer service models. I list some of them, like layer 3 SM, layer 2 SM, and also ACT and WAN. But these are all technology specific, but the NBI model in the definition, it should be intent like model, and it should be express requirements rather than how it achieved. So this slice service model is used when service provider provides like slicing as service, like so different from the existing one like layer 3 VPN as service or ACT and VN as service. So in this way, customer could focus on the service requirements rather than whether it's a VPN technology or whether it's a ACTN technology. So this is the model position that. Next slide, please. There's some delay, so I cannot see the screen.
Is that the same for
Yes,
everyone?
but
I'm not seeing the same delay. I can't tell for other people, but maybe just start.
yes, I can go with this one, but actually,
If the slide number, if you say the slide number, other people can follow along.
Yeah, I can see that this is number. I think this is the number 3 one, but I can go with this because like in the second slide, I summarize all the comments regarding this modeling approach. Like someone proposed to reuse VN model, and someone also proposed to use augmenting VN model.
Do you see slide 3 right now?
Yes, still I cannot. I can see just blank screen. Does everyone else can see the screen?
I see it. I'll also put the link in the
chat. Maybe you can talk about the slide 3.
Yes, yeah. Now I can see the summary about this modeling options for network slice service model. And here we give a summary on this modeling approach. The first option is to reuse VN model, but we investigated this model, and actually this model is tightly coupling with T topology model. Customer has to use VN model and together with T topology to define the service. And apart from that, VN model also use a definition with like VN AP access point or virtual network access point, which these terms are quite different with the slice network slice definition. So, and also this model meets a lot of NS features defining framework like SLO and SLE, and they have some SL definition, but they use T topology path constraints to represent that. So it's buried in the model. It's hard to use. So we are thinking reusing this VN model is quite hard. And the other approach is augmenting VN model, and then the same issue apply here. So still, this is T topology coupling. And there is also some comments proposed that they want to remove T topology banding, but because this model doesn't exist, and right now IETF network slice definition doesn't say that a network slice is a type of virtual network, and NSE is also defining AP or VNAP. So the authors gave the analysis on these models. Still think we still suggest that an independent model is needed. So in this way, the network slice service model is modeling use the modeling approach as layer 3 SM and layer 2 SM, and it doesn't use other T topology model or other topology model to support the service. And also right now in TEAS network, there are other approaches to implement slice services, something like multi-topology, flex-ego. These are not T techniques. And so we are thinking VN model can be used to realize the slice service. This could be used together with other like layer 3 SM, layer 2 SM, and also other network model. So next slide, please. Yes, here's we want to give a more detailed modeling approach comparison on like what's the difference with access point defining VN model and and the NSE definition. And you can see in this picture that I show a T topology here, and access point defining VN model refers to the access link between customer node and also the provider node. So with each access link, then we'll use an access point to identify this access link. So it's a one-to-one mapping with access link. And with this, and we also use T topology abstract node to define the VN connectivity matrix. So they are using this modeling approach. But given the difference with network slice endpoint, actually network slice endpoint, just like Adrian just give the definition on the service endpoint, this modeling, our modeling approach is use NSE to represent the four options of Adrian's on service endpoints definition. But the VN access point actually is the two options that the access link is equivalent to the access connectivity, and that two options is VN's modeling approach. So here is a difference about this modeling of endpoint difference. Next slide, please. I think there's one. Yes, and here's we give the summarization of these two different the difference between these two young models, young structures of these two young model has quite different things. Like in VN, they use they maintain a AP list and VN AP association. This association doesn't defining network slice framework. And you can also see that we show here the young model, the VN will referring to the leaf ref to T topology definition like abstract node and also connectivity matrix. So you can hear that this VN model, it's in the current VM model, it's quite short, but actually it's use a lot of attributes defining T topology. And the AP and WIN AP does not align with the definition of NSE. It's the two option defining in those use cases. And we think that WIN and T topology Young model are just one of the slice selection, slice realization techniques. So, and here we like each NS endpoint, we modeling here as we can associate one each endpoint can associate with multiple access link here. So we can cover the four options that defining network slice framework. So next slide, please. Yes, and then there is also comments about that is network slice service young? Is this the only network slice service model? Our answer is no, because customer like service provider could use layer 3 SM or layer 2 SM or WAN can use for slicing and also realization for this technology agnostic service model. And we think that both all these models can be coexist and can be provide for customer for different usage, especially when a service provider may implement multiple technologies in their network and to support different slice to support slicing service. And this independent service model can help to hide the implementation difference. So our consideration on this, maybe in the future revision of this draft, we can add more text to clarify this, that why this model can be coexisted with other customer service models. Next slide, please. Here we give a summary on the concerns raised on the mailing list, and here we want to to clarify most of concerns, so people can get more understanding about this model's relationship with the current ACTM framework and also other models relationships. There is some question about how does this map to ACTM framework. Our answer is this model can be part of CMI interface along with WAN model or layer 3 SM or layer 2 SM. And whether this model is a replacement of WAN model, no, we are thinking about WAN model, they can be coexisted and can be used to realize. And I think I will not read out all this text, and these are just for information for the working group. And next slide, please. Yeah, so our conclusion still is that we believe a new independent network slice service module is needed as per current IETF network slice definition. And this model doesn't have some, can coexist with other existing customer service model. And so this is very helpful for this network slice service work. So that's all for the presentation. Thanks. Is there some question? questions.
Maybe it makes sense to jump right into Daniele's presentation and then take questions. Unless someone has a specific clarifying question, if you're talking about the questions that have come up on list, let's go to Daniele first. So hearing no one, why don't we jump there?
Okay, so questions, yeah, perfect. Good, thanks a lot. So this is a summary. I think when the agenda was put together, the title "A View on Concerns" was perfectly identifying the issue. So let's start from the very beginning. The draft is presented as a customer service model, but our impression was that it was used a little bit differently. It was claimed to be a customer service model, but it was used a little bit differently. So we took RFC 8309 and we started to analyze the various models. Here, given that we often speak about customers in different ways. So the customer is, in many cases, the consumer of an interface, etc. We tried to use different color coding. So what you see in light blue here is the customer from a business perspective. So is who buys the service from the operator. We started to analyze a little bit where this model could fit. Let's start from the right. So is it a service delivery model? So something that sits between the service orchestrator and the network orchestrator, both of them managed by the operator? Probably the answer is no. And I mean, the previous presentation also said clearly that it's not something that sits on interface B. And by the way, one thing that we seem to agree on is the fact that the service delivery model doesn't really exist in real networks, because the service orchestrator and the network orchestrator in many cases are collapsed into a single entity, which is what we call here for simplicity OSS/orchestration. So then this is, if you look on the left side of the slide, this is option one. This is a customer service model, so the one that sits against interface A. So between the customer and the OSS orchestrator. Next, please. So we have seen the usage of this model as something on top of the MDSC. We went to check RFC 8453, and actually it says that the CNC, the customer network controller, have direct access to the MDSC. So the boundary between the customer and the operator is the one that sits between the CNC and the MDSC. Actually, that's not reality. If you look at the right side of the picture, we have what we thought would happen but didn't happen, which is the left side branch, where the CNC, the customer, application controller, whatever, has direct access through customer services service models to the MDSC, to the operator network in general. What really happens in the industry is what you see on the right, where you have the OSS, the orchestrator, what we called before OSS orchestration, which again is joint service orchestrator and network orchestrator, but managed and operated by the operator, which have access to the MDSC. So there is where we have the network models. In fact, it's where we have the L2NM, the L3NM, etc. We hardly ever, if not ever, see the service models between those two components. The customer then sits on top of this OSS box There can be other boxes, the BSS, etc. And it uses the customer service model to request for services, connections, etc. to the operator. From a network slicing point of view, we agree that this customer service model is missing. We don't agree that a network model is missing, because it exists, and many existing models can be used there. Next, please. So discussion, ACTN or non-ACTN? Actually, this is something that applies to both ACTN and non-ACTN frameworks, which, by the way, are extremely similar. If you see on the left, we have an ACTN-enabled network where we have the MDSC, the PNCs, etc. On the right, if we have a non-ACTN type of network, with or without traffic engineering, for example, UNF, TAPI, TIP, MAST, MEF-LSO, the architecture is always the same, with the same type of models being used. And here we are adding now the NSC. The NSC, I mean, is not can be a different piece of software, but I mean, it seems that there is a general agreement that this is something that sits inside the MDSC if it's an ACTN network, inside a, let me call it generically, hierarchical SDN controller in a non-ACTN framework. Next, please. So let's focus a little bit on the interface between the customer and the OSS, not not the MDSC or the hierarchical SDN controller. Let's assume that the network slicing NBI is a customer service model. So it seems that we are all starting to agree this is the case. A service model for network slicing is missing. Yes, this is true. We have service models over there, DEL2SM, DEL3SM, but they are not enough for network slicing. It could be possible to augment them, but I mean, no one is objecting the fact that a new model can be used there. Then the model presented in the draft is a candidate to fulfill it. Yes, it's something that should be used by the customer to request a slice to the operator. It's expected to be done against the USS, not so it's not an NSC NBI. If we all agree that the NSC is something sitting at the MDSC level / hierarchical SDN controller level. Hence, this model shouldn't be used by the operator as a network model. So it's not something that should be used between two operator components, so between the OSS and the MDSC or hierarchical SDN model, simply because existing models can already meet the requirements. Some of them require augmentation, yes, for sure, but small enough not to justify throwing away what already exists there. Another thing that we wanted to point out is that the VN is not just a network model, it's also a service model. Second thing, the VN is not bound to ACTN. Better, we as author of the VN started along that path, but the chairs suggested, rightfully, I would say now, to have the VN as something that is completely disjoint from ACTN. In fact, the CTN is one of the possible environments where the VN can be used, but is not the only one. By the way, speaking about models, we tried to understand a little bit better where the L2 SM and NM and L3 SM and NM position themselves to see if there was alignment with. Sorry, I'm already jumping to the next slide. Can you go to that? Thanks a lot. So we wanted to check how the service and network models position themselves against RFC 8309, and we found that there is actually a lot of confusion, because the L3 NM says it's a service delivery model, the L2 NM says it's a network model. So I mean, we have some confusion in mind, but I would say this is something that is pretty much widespread. Network models for network slicing. So, customer on the left you have the classical picture where we have a customer higher level operation system, which is the end-to-end network slice orchestrator, the one that has its NBI towards the NSC. So again, what is this component? This customer high-level operation. For what we said before, this is what we call the OSS orchestration, something that belongs to the operator, that doesn't belong to the customer. In fact, if you see the mapping on the right, everything is red, light red, and not blue. So once again, the NSC is a functionality of the hierarchical SDN controller in non-ACTN networks, or of the MDSC in ACTN networks. You see, it sits here in the middle of this hierarchy. The NSC NBI is towards the OSS, is not towards the customer. Next, please. So, a very quick overview of the existing models with and without ACTN. There, between the OSS and the hierarchical SDN controller, we have a wide set of modules. VPN network models, L1 CSM, L2NM, L3NM, network models, not the service version. Topology, we have the network topology, T topology. For the infrastructure, we have T tunnels, virtual network, LSPs, policies, and the T service mapping. How is it possible to realize a network slice today? In a non-T type of network, you can ask for a plain VPN, layer 2 or layer 3. You can ask for plain infrastructure, an LSP, a simple policy that can be implemented via FlexAlgo, segment routing, etc. AVN, with or without T. Today, the VN doesn't support the non-T scenarios, but the augmentation is extremely simple. In a T type of environment, you can do something a little bit more sophisticated. You can create a VPN. You can create a T tunnel, and then bind the VPN to the T tunnel using the T service mapping, which is the reason why the T service mapping was created. You can do it with a T tunnel. You can do it with a VN. I mean, both of them perfectly work. As I said before, please note that ACTN is the primary example of the usage of the VN-Young model, but not the only one. Proposed augmentations. So this is next, please. Proposed augmentations. So first one, support for technology agnostic topology. The VN abstract node to be used to reference a topology, which today is a T topology. Using a profile of the T topology for non-T scenarios is perfectly possible. It's as it's explained today in an existing draft in the TEAS working group. So it's possible to apply the abstract node also to non-T topologies. Second, the usage of draft Liu is the draft that Shufeng and his co-authors put together, which augments the network topology. So here we just need to change the reference of abstract node into node ID. So again, something very, very simple. Exposing the path constraints of the VN and the VN member as SLO and SLE, instead of having them hidden in the connectivity matrix like it is today. But again, I mean, it's taking one parameter and removing it, exposing it outside instead of keeping hidden into the connectivity matrix. Support of technology agnostic connectivity matrix. This is something that needs to be a little bit discussed. And then a simple mapping of terminologies like the following one: network slice, virtual network, SLO, SLE policy, path constraints, NS endpoint, access point, and VN access point, NS connection is a VN member. All of these things perfectly map one-to-one, and they meet all the constraints of the network slice. We just added one more slide. If you go to the next. Basically, this comes from the people in C-Camp working on OTN slicing. They would prefer to have a model convergence, in the sense that OTN slicing is something that is technology specific. It has its own use cases, customers, and which are a little bit different from the use cases that we are dealing with here. They basically needed to support two different types of slices: connectivity-based and resource-based, called connection and topology partitioning. From their point of view, it's preferable to merge the three models: the WD, the VN, and the one proposed by Shufeng, and then work on a technology-independent augmentation of this model. I just wanted to bring this up as a further consideration. That's it. I hope I was on time.
You're a bit over. You're over by a few minutes, and we should get the conversation going. I was thinking we could go back to the question slide, if that's okay with Pavan, unless he wants to do something different. And in queue, we have Adrian, Bo, Reza. So why don't we get started, Adrian?
Yeah, I'll start talking while you find the connection slide. I have 3 points for Daniele. The first one is to be really careful on your use of customer versus consumer. We moved in the slicing work to use the term consumer because people were getting confused about the difference between the paying customer, the end user, and the service consumer, which may or may not be internal. So that's just a side point for you. The next small point is that when I look at Bo's draft, the only time it mentions NBI is actually in the file name. The whole of the rest of the time, it's talking about network slice customer service model. And my belief is that we need a network slice customer service model in the working group. And provided we make sure that we all know that that is what we're talking about, we should just get on and deal with it. And then my third point is to note that in your slides, you had mention of a network slice connection. And I think you need to look very carefully at the difference between a VN and a connectivity matrix. Because in fact, a VN is a set of connectivity matrices. It is not a single connectivity matrix. And that's me finished.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I think Adrian helps us to clarify the file name. Yeah, we are sorry about the file name. It may be misleading that that seems more like a network model, but actually we are doing a customer service model. And the other thing is that Dan's talking about the slice network model, and we think these are quite useful, but this is not our model, and we hope we can get consensus that on defining this customer service model first, following the modeling approach like their 3SM and their 2SM, then we can working on the network model. Thanks.
Reza?
I guess one clarification that Adrian also mentioned, and I think is very important, it's the concept of the consumer or customers. I don't want to repeat what Adrian mentioned, but the important aspect here is that depends on the use case. You know, we put a group of use cases in the framework document and definition document that what are the use case of IETF network slice. Depends on the use case. This consumer could be an orchestrator, could be end user that is paying. And we cannot dictate what is that, depends on the use case. And this is the reason that we use that generic term consumer versus customer, that we clarify that one in the definition of framework documents, because in the ACTN, consumer or customer has a specific meaning, but it's not the case in IETF network slice. And I think this is very important aspect to be considered. Another thing that it was in the presentation of Daniele was he mentioned about network slice, network slice, and that is basically from our terminology is a network slice realization. Any technique that you mentioned has some sort of the technology specific, referring to the TE or referring to L2SM or L3SM. All those are various, including ACTN itself, are the realization techniques. They can well live with the model that we have, our model sitting at the top, and all those realization model can be used. From that aspect, you mentioned that MDSC and NSC are the same level. So from that aspect, you will see that if consider that realization versus technology agnostic, the view is a bit different. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniele, for the great presentation. I do want to mention the mappings that you suggested on one of the slides. They are not, for someone working on network slicing, they are not obvious to come up with these mappings. And although it is, I totally agree, it's possible to augment the VN model to achieve the connectivity matrix and SLOs and realize a network slice service, possibly. Those mappings, I don't know where we're going to maintain them, where someone working on network slice service will find them. So is it going to be in the network slice definitions draft that a VNAP is, maybe I'm the wrong term, but a virtual, an endpoint or a VN member is a connection. I don't know how many know that you can map a VN member to an NS network slice connection. If we had this mapping somewhere, then, and I don't know if we want to do that, it would be a little bit easier to do this extension. That's what I wanted to mention. Thanks.
Italo or Daniele, do you want to respond to some of these comments that are coming in?
For clarification.
Go ahead.
Okay, I was a little bit confused by the discussion. So I understand the difference between customer and as an end user and a consumer. But I have not understood whether this YAM model, the WD YAM model, is a customer service model used by the customer, not by the consumer of the network slice to request a service, or it is a consumer service model or to be used by the consumer of the network slicing. I've been a little bit lost by that discussion. I would like to better understand the positioning.
Hi. My comment to Danieli, one was Danieli, in the RFC 8453, we do split the MDSC functions across boxes, and we say that MDSC can easily be split at the service orchestrator and at the network orchestrator. But throughout the analysis, I think you kind of showed MDSC as a single box. And I was kind of thinking that we always thought MDSC not as a physical box, but more as a functional elements that needs to do that. And even when we map IETF NSC, I think that part would still holds true. So that would be my comment with respect to the mapping and the analysis you have done. And I would let other members put in their comments. Thank you.
Igor?
I have a question actually to Tarek and Pawan. So if, for example, a network slice has several connectivity matrices, okay, what would it make to the definition of network slice aggregator? What does it mean in this case? This question to you, and another question to Daniele. How do you say that when you are using a particular VM service, you need to use a particular connectivity matrix within VM? Okay, and as far as I remember, it is not possible today to have more than one connectivity matrix per VM.
Danieli, do you want to take?
So Daniele says that he has to go. He got the phone going off during this presentation with something urgent that he had to go deal with. So I don't know if there's anyone else who wants to jump in, who was taking a similar position on the list. If there's no one who wants to respond, I think we move to Adrian.
Can I have a quick response to Igor? Yeah, our network slice service model currently doesn't support multiple connectivity matrix, but the authors are discussing on how to model that. Yeah, that's my answer.
Okay, let's discuss this later. But for example, from the point of view of network slice aggregation, wouldn't this mean to have like a connectivity matrix aggregation then? How to reconcile these two definitions?
Igor, it sounds like to get that answer, we'll have to have the discussion on the list.
Okay.
I think it's a completely valid question. Just we're not getting any responses, so we'll take it to the list.
Sure.
Adrian?
Yeah, so I wanted to answer Atello's question about customer and consumer. And I think it's important to not even start to think about customers as end users or paying people and so on. When we wrote RFC 8309, which talked about the customer service model, we were thinking very much in terms of customer and consumer being synonyms. So, for example, a layer 3 VPN customer is the person or organization that uses the layer 3 VPN. And it may be an internal structure within an operator, and it may be cascaded hierarchically. It doesn't really matter. And that's why we moved to the term consumer for slicing. And probably if we were rewriting the 8309, we would call it a consumer service model rather than a customer service model. Thanks.
Iowa? We'll take one more question and then wrap it up.
I have a one question about the technology agnostic terminology. My question is packet switching a technology agnostic or technology specific? Because if we are when we are dealing with, say, other type of slicing like OTN slicing, some parameters does not apply, right? So when we talk about the packet agnostic, technology agnostic, we need to define the model and the parameters on the SLO to be really technology agnostic. Thank you.
Tarek, you're the last.
Yeah, I want to go back to Igor's question about the multiple connectivity matrices per slice. And assuming we want to carry multiple traffic types on the same network slice, one connection can carry multiple traffic types, or we can create multiple connections, one per traffic type. I don't know which approach we will follow, but normally, for scalability, we do allow one connection to carry multiple traffic types, and then we differentiate between the traffic types using something carried in the packet or some other mechanism. If the idea of multiple connectivity matrices is to allow for load balancing or redundancy or something of the like, then I think it should be hidden from the service request. If that's what I'm seeing is, the underlay can create multiple LSPs to satisfy the same connection. That's possible, but it's still one connection at the end of the day.
Okay, I think we can start. We need to start wrapping up.
So on a positive, I think we've heard that there is general agreement that the NBI is consumer or customer, whatever we want to call that, consumer facing. I think while Daniele was here, I think he agreed with that point. Unfortunately, we don't have him here right now to say yes on that. So, but I do think we, in this group, at least have agreement on that. That's an important distinction of scope. And but we still clearly have a number of topics that we have to flush out on the list. Hopefully this discussion has helped move that along somewhat. We will take an action we as chairs will take an action to look back on the discussion and send out some summary points, and more importantly, also put forward a statement on how we think we should take the next step on the adoption poll. And I think those are the main summary points. Pavan, did I miss anything?
Yeah, I mean, there were some questions in Adrian's slides as well. We'll try to summarize those. I think some we have clarity on some more than the others. So yeah, I mean, we will at least call out the ones that we believe has reached a logical stop. Then we'll continue discussion on the rest.
But also, please don't wait for us if you have a topic that you'd like to continue discussing. For example, Igor's, please send that to the list and try to get that discussion. Also point out in the first half, we did reach, I think, some notable agreements, at least in this forum, on Adrian's questions. So we'll also send that to the list for general agreement. As Pavan started us out with, we reach agreement on the list, not in these meetings. But with that, I'd like to say thank you all for participating, and I look forward to our next, unfortunately, online experience, not in-person experience. Thank you all for your contribution.
Thanks, everyone. This was very useful. Thanks.